But the one who practices magic, the one who practices rabbit's foot religion is impatient. I mean, he wants his answers and he wants them right now. But God is not our cosmic bellhop. And He does not exist to fulfill all the wishes of our materialistic little hearts. The health and wealth gospel is a satanic mockery of the real gospel precisely because it not only denies the value of suffering and the call of Christ to take up one's cross and follow Him, it also tries to manipulate God to give us the desires of our hearts, whether they're good for us or not. And to these sorts of requests, God has an answer. The answer is no. A loving God, like a loving parent, will not give us things that will spoil and destroy our Christian character. And by the way, no is definitely an answer to prayer. The wrong sort of prayer. And we are like Satan. We want God to worship us. Tell you what, Jesus, we'll give you control. But first, give us what we want. Worship us. Malcolm Muggeridge was filming a documentary in Israel, and he found himself musing about these temptations, and he wrote this. He said, curiously enough, just at the right moment to begin filming, when the shadows were long enough and the light was not too weak, I happened to notice nearby a whole expanse of stones, all identical and looking uncommonly like loaves well baked and brown. How easy for Jesus to have turned these stone loaves into edible ones, as later He would turn water into wine at a wedding feast. And after all, why not? The Roman authorities distributed free bread to promote Caesar's kingdom, and Jesus could do the same to promote His. Jesus had but to give a nod of agreement, and He could have constructed Christendom, and not on four shaky gospels and a defeated man nailed on a cross, but on the basis of sound economic planning and principles. Every utopia could have been brought to pass, every hope have been realized, and every dream been made to come true. What a benefactor then Jesus would have been. Acclaimed equally in the London School of Economics and Harvard Business School, a statue in Parliament Square, and even a bigger one on Capitol Hill and in Red Square. Instead, he turned the offer down on the ground that only God should be worshipped. That's something worth thinking about. Who do we think we are, really, to demand that God perform some parlor tricks? What we need is a little self-awareness. See, when you stand in the presence of God, the last thing any self-aware person would do is call for a conjuring trick. Turn some stones into bread. Listen, when you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, if you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and contemplating your own greatness, well, that's pathological. We need to find our rightful place, and you won't find it in trying to tell God His business. And I realize some go to the other extreme. I mean, the Bible says the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of His hands. That's Psalm 19, talking about the great expanse of heaven. And sometimes people say that they cannot believe that if there is a God, He would take interest in such a tiny speck of reality called humanity on planet Earth. The universe, they say, is so vast. It makes man utterly insignificant. Why would God have bothered to create such a microscopic speck called Earth and humanity and then get involved with us? And beneath this question is a fundamental failure to see what the universe is all about. So listen to me here. I'm about to give you the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. Okay? It's about the greatness of God. That's what it's all about. The greatness of God and not the significance of man. God made man small and the universe big to say something about himself. And he says it for us to learn and enjoy. Namely, that he is infinitely great and powerful and wise and beautiful. And the more we see and understand about the unfathomable depths of space, the more we should stand in awe of God. I mean, the disproportion between us and the universe is a parable about the disproportion between us and God. And it's an understatement. But the point is not to nullify us, but to glorify Him. The temptations that Jesus faced and that we all face is a temptation to fail to see what life, the universe, and everything is really all about. If we fail to understand the greatness of God, we fall for the most insignificant of things. But just who is this God who allows himself to be challenged, tempted by the likes of a peon like Satan, or a self-worshiping speck like me? How about this, Jesus? How about you turn some stones to bread? How about you throw yourself off the pinnacle of the temple so we can see how the angels fly? How about you be my servant for a while? How about that, Jesus? I mean, the greater revelation here is that he even tolerates such nonsense. So who are we dealing with? This guy in the desert. Who is he? And as I was thinking about these temptations, my mind went back to Dostoevsky, who made the temptation scene the centerpiece of his novel, The Brothers Karamazov. The agnostic brother, Ivan Karamazov, you may remember, he writes a poem called The Grand Inquisitor. He sets it in 16th century Seville. And in the poem, a disguised Jesus visits the city at a time when heretics are being burned day after day after day. And the Grand Inquisitor, who's a cardinal, a guy who's described as an old man, almost 90, tall and erect, with withered face and sunken eyes, recognizes Jesus and has him thrown into prison. And there the two visit in a scene that's intentionally reminiscent of those temptations in the desert. And the Inquisitor has an accusation to make. He's angry with Jesus. By turning down the three temptations, he says that Jesus has forfeited the three greatest powers at his disposal. The powers of miracle and mystery and authority. And he should have followed Satan's advice and performed the miracles on demand in order to increase his fame among the people. He should have welcomed the offer of authority and power. The Inquisitor shakes a finger in Jesus' face and he says, instead of taking possession of men's freedom, you increased it and burdened the spiritual kingdom of mankind with its sufferings forever. You desired man's free love, that he should follow you freely, enticed and taken captive by you. By resisting Satan's temptations to override human freedom, the Inquisitor maintains that Jesus himself made himself far too easy to reject. He surrendered his greatest advantage, the power to compel, to force, to coerce belief. Doesn't he sound like Satan? Doesn't he sound like the skeptic who demands a sign? If you're really here, you might come right down here and turn this stone into bread. Who do you think you are anyway? You sit up there and you don't bow to my every whim. Just who do you think you are? Yeah. Just who? There's an answer there, I think, as to why God doesn't just come right down here and force us to believe. You see, Dostoevsky was writing his novel. While he was writing his novel, communist revolutionaries were organizing themselves in his homeland in Russia. And they promised to turn stones into bread, to guarantee safety and security for all the citizens in exchange for one simple thing: their freedom. We'll take care of all your needs, but you must surrender your freedom. And communism would become the god of Russia, founded on miracle, mystery, and authority. 75 years later, when it all came crashing down, the editors of Pravda, which was the mouthpiece, the official mouthpiece for the Communist Party, they were shaken to the core. So shaken, in fact, that they were taking advice from emissaries of a religion that their founder had scorned as the opiate of the people. The editors understood what a lot of Christians don't understand. They understood that Christianity and communism have the same ideals: equality, justice, sharing, racial harmony, and all that kind of thing. But they also understood that the Marxist pursuit of that vision had produced the worst nightmare the world had ever seen. But why? So they said, we don't know how to motivate people to show compassion. That's what the editors said. The editor-in-chief said. He said, we tried raising money for the children of Chernobyl, but the average Russian citizen would rather spend his money on drink. How do you reform and motivate people? How do you get them to be good? They were asking this panel of Christian leaders from this country. All attempts at compelling morality, and oh, how some Christians need to hear this. All attempts at compelling morality at the point of a gun or couched in religious language or legalism produce defiant subjects and tyrannical rulers who lose their moral core. That's all it produces. And those desert temptations teach us above all the profound difference between God's power and Satan's power. Satan has the power to coerce, to dazzle, to force obedience, to destroy. We've learned that much from that kind of power with a bullwhip or a billy club or an AK-47 or a pharisaical sermon. Humans can force other beings to do just about anything. Satan's power is external and coercive. God's power, on the other hand, is internal and non-coercive. You would not enslave man by a miracle, accuses the Grand Inquisitor. He saw it as weakness. But as every parent knows, and every lover knows, love cannot be forced. God is not a Nazi, said Thomas Merton. Indeed, God is not. The master of the universe would become its victim, powerless before a squad of soldiers in a garden. God made himself weak for one purpose: to let human beings choose freely for themselves what to do with him. What will you do with him? In Dorothy Sayers' play, The Man Born to be King, King Herod tells the Magi this. He said, "You cannot rule men by love. When you find your king, tell him so. Only three things will govern a people: fear and greed and the promise of security." King Herod understood the management principles of Satan. The same principles that Jesus declined in the desert. And you need to think about that the next time you vote for a leader. What's he really offering? Is he someone to fear? Is he feeding your greed? Is he promising you security? Or is he offering you freedom? See, here's a God, the God of the universe, with a light touch. I think about these temptations, I cannot help but think that here's the God